Hi, Caleb from Brownells here, and in today's video we're going to be doing a Generation 3 Glock clone build. So specifically the clone frame we're going to be using is one that's made by a company called Grit Grips. And if you're not familiar with Grit Grips, I wasn't actually familiar with them until somewhat recently actually. The last time we did a Glock clone build using a different one, a lot of y'all in the comments were like, hey, you should check out Grit Grips. So I did. And I thought they were great. Long story short, now we're carrying them. So you can get these Grit Grip frames. So let me talk about what they actually are. I'm just gonna, for like the sake of my sanity and like vocal tongue tie and stuff, I'm just gonna call them Grit frames instead of Grit Grip frames. So when I say grit, that's what I'm referring to. Okay, now we have them in two different flavors currently. The one for the Glock 19 Generation 3. And then we also have them for the 43X. So you could build one of those slimline, like super compact carry guns if you wanted to, which is awesome. We currently offer them in two different colors. So we have the flat dark earth as well as the black. They do make them in other colors. I think they also make an OD green. We don't currently carry those at the time you're watching this video, but if you want us to, voice your opinion, because obviously we're reading comments and listening to y'all, right? Or else we wouldn't have these at all. Okay, so today we're not going to be using the 43X. We'll do that in a future build. So I'm going to set those over here. But we will be using the 19. And the cool thing about the 19 is that they actually come with their magazine release, which is pretty cool because it's actually a magazine button that I would actually use. I don't like the super square long ones. And I did say this was a Gen 3 frame, but the actual magazine catch, if you look here, it's reversible. They use the Gen 4 style magazine catch, so you could flip it around like you can't do on standard Gen 3 Glocks, which is pretty cool. So that's an awesome little quality of life upgrade they did. So just to kind of reiterate here, everything on here takes Gen 3 Glock parts except that button. That's a Gen 4 button. Okay, that's it. That's all you need to know. And I will also say this, we're going to be building on this frame. I got a Brownells Glock 19 lower parts kit, all right? And this lower parts kit does not come with a locking block because a lot of manufacturers that make Glock clone frames use their own proprietary locking block. So at this time, our kit we sell does not come with a locking block. So in order to complete one of these frames, you'll need the frame, a lower parts kit, and the locking block. Of course, if you wanted to piece it all together and not buy a kit, you could do that. We also offer this kit without the fire control, or without the trigger. So you could, if you want to use an aftermarket trigger, you don't have to, it's a few bucks cheaper, so you don't have to actually pay for a part you're not going to use. So that's also an option there. For this particular build, we're just going to be using the basic parts kits. And then this locking block is actually one that's made by Shadow Systems. Obviously you can use a Glock locking block as well. It's the same exact part. All right. And then for our slide, we're going to be using a Brownells Premium slide. That's optic cut. We're going to be using some AmeriGlo suppressor height, or not suppressor height sights, but they're marketed as the MOS height sights. So like if you had a Glock MOS optic cut slide, these are what would fit with that. I have no idea how they're gonna like look or function on this slide, but today we're all gonna learn and find out. Okay, we're also gonna be using a Viridian red dot sight because I was actually pretty dang impressed with these. Obviously this one's a little bit beat up. We had it on some other guns before, so we pulled it off of there. We're gonna use it on this build now. A SureFire X300U, just because this is an awesome flashlight. A Brownells barrel. We also offer this in a threaded version if you want a threaded barrel. But this, like I said, we're just doing a pretty standard build here. So we just have a standard barrel. All right. Magazine. A Magpul Glock 19 magazine. Just a good, reliable, affordable magazine. And we also have another slide. This is the Advantage Arms 22 conversion kit, just because I think it's cool. And it comes like this, ready to go. So once you complete the frame, you can literally just slap this on. We'll talk about that more in a little bit in the video. But let's just jump into the build here. Let's get started. Okay, let's start by assembling our frame. Just gonna slide some stuff out the way here. Okay, so as it sits, what we'll do is take out all of our parts here. Just pour them right on the table. If you want to use a little parts tray, that's great too. I'm gonna place this bag neatly over there, and let's jump into it. Okay, so the part I like to install first on these is the actual slide lock. So your slide lock is what is actually your takedown levers. Okay, so we have this part right here, which is the actual levers, and then we have the spring for it. All right, so those two components. And the way we're actually going to install these, let me see if I can hold this in my vise in a way that we can both see it. Because I kind of need to be able to see what I'm doing here. So I'm just going to turn this all the way around and just gently grip it like so. And you should be able to see right inside of there. All right. So the first thing we're going to install is the spring. If you notice, one end of it has a raised piece and the other side is just straight. We're going to take that straight bar and I'm going to use this just as a pointing tool here. Alright, so that's the slot where it's going to go in right there. And if you notice, the one I'm holding looks way too long, and that's because it is. This kit actually comes with two, so you're going to want to use the shorter of these two. Alright, so the raised edge is going to go facing the back, and you're going to take that short flat edge and just insert it right into that slot. And if for whatever reason you think I'm moving a little bit too fast, just hit the pause button and then catch up. It's no big deal. Alright, so that should just kind of be sitting in there like so, and it should be sticking up like that right there. Now we're going to install the slide lock lever. Alright, now this does have to go in a certain way. I'm not just going to tell you how it goes in, I'm going to tell you why it goes in the way it does, because I think that's important for pretty much everything, honestly. But here we go. Alright, so what you're going to want, if you notice, you have on the bottom this flat, and then there's this little rectangular cutout right here where my tool is pointing. That is where this spring is going to sit in, okay? So this lever is going to go through the side, and it's going to sit inside just like this, with that spring pushing up on it, applying upward tension, all right? And if you notice, on this raised portion here, one side is flat, the other side is cut. So it has a raised ledge going all the way around it, except for the sides. So top and bottom raised ledge, all right? The reason that raised ledge is there is because that is actually what locks on. Let me show you here if you can kind of see. This is actually what locks on to the front of your barrel whenever your firearm is assembled. So if you notice, you have a slot cut right here with a raised ledge on the bottom. So this literally just indexes with this and hooks in just like that, okay? So with that being said, it is important that this area right here is facing the back, okay? So if you're using this Brownells kit, you'll notice that there's maybe, like yours might have some writing on it right here. That'll be facing back, okay? All right, so the flat side, if it's perfectly flat, that's facing forward. All right. Now, the reason I'm like overemphasizing that, or maybe saying it too much, is because it is important, okay? Now, to get this into the firearm frame, we're going to insert it from either the left or right side. It doesn't matter. But what we're going to do is we're going to use a tool. You can use a punch. If you have the Glock armor tool, that'll work just fine too. All right, you're going to push down on this spring that we installed, and you are going to slide this lever over the top of it and push it all the way in until it clicks into place just like that. And you can check it by just pulling down on it gently. Yep, there's good spring tension there. That's perfect. This part is now installed correctly. Okay, on to the next part. So let's talk about this trigger and trigger housing assembly and all this other stuff here. And by talk about, I mean let's just kind of throw it together. All right. It's pretty straightforward. What I like to do is start by taking this housing here and taking the connector. So this little piece right here is called the connector. It really only goes in one way. If you look at your housing, there's a slot cut out on the side for it. Just stick it right in there and it goes right into its home. If you notice, it is sprung out a little bit on the side, like it doesn't fit perfectly flush. That's normal. That's how it's supposed to be. So don't take it out and do any bending to it. Don't bend this piece at all, actually. Leave it how it is. Okay? All right, now we can take our trigger spring. Notice how it kind of forms like an S. You have an open end right here, and then on the opposite side, you have an open end. So it's a diagonal open end, so it's like literally an S. Okay, so this does have to go in a certain way. And the way that is whenever it's installed on the actual trigger bar itself, the hook needs to be facing downward, okay? Which means on the opposite end, the hook that hooks into the housing is going to be facing upward. So, the easiest way to do this is to have your hook facing the open end upward, and then you just simply come in from the inside of the housing and just hook it through that hole. And you can see the hole right there. It goes all the way through. We will hook it through there. And you will end up with something coming through just like that right there. Okay? So at this point, I just kind of hold it vertical like that. Then the hook needs to be facing down in the trigger bar. So in that slot in the trigger bar, we'll just hook it in facing down. Just like that. So now what we need to do is take this wing of the trigger bar and just hook it through the slot that's cut in the side of your housing. And this is going to feel like really like flimsy and loose. This is perfectly normal. It's not going to be like that once it's inside the gun. The gun's going to hold all this stuff together. But this is a properly assembled trigger housing, or trigger mechanism, I should say. Now, what I actually like to do before I drop this into the frame is I'll just kind of let it fall apart there, and then I will take a little bit of gun grease, and for this I have some Action Lube Plus. I think I have some in a syringe that may be a little easier to apply. I do. You could use your favorite gun oil and stuff for this, but I like the grease because it stays in place a lot better for a longer time, especially on this part. What I'm going to do is just put some on the connector where the trigger bar rubs against it. And this is actually what determines your trigger brake and pull weight and stuff like that. Or some of it, I should say, not all of it. Alright. So as you can see, that fell off, that's okay. I'll put the grease right there. And I'll just hook this back in. Alright, and now we're ready to put it into the frame. So, what I'll do is I'll kind of position this back end together. Just kind of pinch it together like so. And just drop it into the back, making sure my trigger goes through the slot that's cut for it as well. And then this all just kind of pushes together just like that. Alright. And now we can kind of start pinning some stuff in place. Notice you have 3 pins. 1, 2, 3. You have a large diameter pin with 2 slots cut in it. We'll slide that out the way. You have a smaller diameter pin with 2 larger diameter ends on it. We'll slide that out the way. And then you have your last just straight and shortest of all the pins. This is the one that actually goes through the back of your frame. This goes through the back of the frame and through the back of that trigger housing and holds it in place. Alright? So just push it in. Put it in the slot. And you can use, whatever tool you have to push it into place. I'm going to use a hammer, but not to actually hammer. I'm just going to use it as a large surface to press with, just to get the pin started. And if you have a roll pin starter punch, I'm sure you can use that too. Alright, so I got it in most of the way. I'm just going to finish it off with a punch. And just press it in there. So the actual pin itself is friction fit, and it's held in there pretty snugly. But you shouldn't need a hammer. You should be able to press everything in. And again, if you have the Glock armor tool, that's perfectly fine to use as well. And if you push too hard, it will come out the other end. It is not directional. So this being a new build, it is pretty darn snug. But that's okay. And if you use a punch that's the right diameter, it'll get you into the slot without punching all the way through. So that's probably what I should have did in the first place. And that punch size is 5/32. So a 5/32 punch will fit in the inset without pushing all the way through. Or the counter bore, I should say. Okay. And now the actual housing mechanism in the back is installed. So now we can work on the front. And this is a pretty straightforward process. So what I actually want to do right now is take that locking block, the one that obviously, like I said before, this one doesn't come in the kit at the time this video is launched anyway. And if you notice, there are, try not to drop it. If you notice, there's a hole drilled all the way through, and then half a hole drilled all the way through. And then 2 legs in the front. So these front legs are going to face forward, and the hole is going to face downward. And we are just going to take it and press it right into the frame around the trigger. Push it all the way in. It should be a snug fit. But push it in until it won't go in anymore, and it should look just like that. Alright. Now, the best part to install at this point is your slide catch. Not to be confused with the slide lock, which was the first one we installed. Alright, so the slide catch, this is an extended one. If you get the regular one, it just won't have this little notch on it, but any standard Gen 3 Glock slide catch will work in here. But what I'm going to do, and actually, before I do this, I'm going to install this pin right here. You can put the slide catch in and then install this pin, but it's a little bit easier if you install this pin first. Alright, so what we're going to do is take this pin and literally just push it all the way through the frame. That's it. And it's a very snug fit here. I'm going to very carefully push it using the actual slide itself, being careful not to, bend or go in at an angle or anything. And then use a punch to finish it off here. And the 5/32 will be a little bit too big on this one. Alright, and it should be just below flush on both sides there. Okay, now let's go back to that slide catch. What I'm going to do is slide it in. If you're looking at the frame from the back, you'll notice there's a slot cut out for it on the left side of the trigger. Let me show you here. Right there on that left side of the trigger. And the hole and spring here are going to go right into that slot. And it'll sit in there just like that. Alright. Now I'm going to take the trigger pin. I'm going to insert it from the opposite side that my slide catch is on. The reason I'm going to do that is because there's 2 slots cut in here. The slide catch is going to try to lock into those, okay? And I don't want to have to go past 2. If I come in from the left side, I got to defeat the first one, then lock into the second one. If I come into the right side, it'll lock into the first one it gets to. And this one shouldn't be nearly as tight as the other ones. This should press right in because the slide catch is actually going to retain it. All right, and that is it for the frame. The frame is completely ready to go. You can drop a slide on here and it's ready to work. So for example, I mentioned we would talk about this 22 slide a little bit more. This 22 slide comes set up, ready to go. You can get it with or without optic mount. It also comes with the magazines, 22 magazines, but it just mounts right on there, and it's just a good little 22. So you could use it for, as a training tool, planking, whatever. It's awesome. But actually, since I got it on there, I'll just use that for my function check. And that seems to work just fine. Okay, so now at this point, let's go ahead and build that 9mm slide out. All right, I'll set this aside. These are the two parts that came in that kit that we won't be using, so we'll just set those aside as well. And we have our Brownells Premium slide. All right, so let's start by just installing the guts of this thing. And let me pour these out on the table. It comes with everything you need except sights and a barrel. It comes with the recoil spring, striker spring, all that good stuff. Okay. So, what I will do, I don't think I put a channel liner in this slide already. So a channel liner is this piece right here. It's just this plastic tube that goes inside of your striker channel. And this is what kind of just sits around your striker and everything like that. This Brownells kit also comes with the installation tool to install this. So it's just this plastic rod right here. We slide it over one end, and then we press it into the channel. And I'm about to find out real quick if I already have one in there. Yep, I already have one in there installed in this one. But if I didn't, all you would do is take it and just press it all the way in until it stops, and that's it. Okay. So, from there, we can start installing the rest of the guts now that we have that channel liner installed. And it's kind of hard to see in there, but yeah, it's in there. Okay. So let's go ahead and set up our striker. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to take it, and I'm going to take this housing right here. If you notice, one side is open and there's a slot cut in it. The other side is completely closed. So I'm going to take my open end. I'm going to insert that over the striker. And that open end is going to go around the sear area right here. So it's going to go right around that. Okay, now I can take the spring and set it on top. Now I have the task of trying to compress this spring as I put these little retainer cups on there. But there's a really easy way to do that other than just trying to fight with it on the table. You can use the slide. So if I hold my slide on the table just like this, I insert my striker backwards and sideways so that this sear piece is sitting on the shelf. This will now hold everything in place while I push the spring down. And you can take your spring cups with the smaller diameter piece facing downward, just like that. Put one on one side and the other on the opposite side. And then let the spring go and everything will be retained. So that's what your spring cups should look like. That right there. Alright, so now the striker is installed. And when you install this into the slide, you don't need any lubricant or anything like that. It goes in dry. That channel liner is actually kind of lubricating it so that or creating less friction as it travels. So you don't need to put anything in there. So just take it, insert it. It'll push all the way in like this. and that's how that'll install. But we're not going to do that just yet. We're going to go ahead and install our extractor, our striker safety, and all that other stuff. So this will actually be installed into here a little bit later, but I like to get it set up and get it out of the way first. Okay, next we will set up our extractor spring. Okay, so we're going to take the extractor rod, which is this rod right here. You have one end that's kind of flat, or it's rounded, but it's there's nothing sticking off of it. Then you have your other end with this protrusion sticking off here. And if you notice, you have a spring in your kit that looks just like this. We're just going to take this spring, press it all the way on here. It's going to be pretty tricky to get on there. It goes on pretty tight. But just press it on until it seats flush. It should look just like that. Okay? And if you notice, you have this little plastic stepped piece. This is just going to go on the opposite end. So these pieces right here are what actually control your extractor tension. So it is very important you use the correct parts on this piece. Okay, now speaking of extractor, we can install the extractor, but there are other parts that are also kind of held together with this. So we have our striker safety plunger. This is what keeps the striker from being able to go forward unless the trigger is pulled. So it is just an internal safety mechanism. Then you have the spring that goes with it. We'll just push these two things together here. And some of them actually fit pretty tight together. Some of them are very loose, like this one right here. So what I will do, I'm going to dip the spring in a little bit of grease on the end that's going into the plunger. And the only reason I'm doing that is so that it acts as an adhesive, so that it just makes things easier when I'm putting this together. I don't have to worry about the spring falling out and rolling off and stuff. So what we're going to do right now is take this spring in first, insert it into the slide, push it down as far as it'll go, and it should feel pretty smooth. If it like starts crunching or comes to a stop, that means the spring is kinked in there, so stop what you're doing and fix it. But you're going to push it all the way down. Take your extractor with the that rounded piece facing inward. It's going to go in just like this. Push it all the way in, flush. Then you can let off with your thumb on the extractor, the striker safety, and it'll hold your extractor in place. For now, anyway. Alright, so the other part that holds your extractor in place is the rod and spring assembly. So the spring is going to go towards the back. So the all metal end will go in first here, or the solid end, I should say. And there's a hole in the back of your slide in the corner. Insert it into that hole. Push it in until it stops. It's not going to go all the way in. It's going to stick out a little bit, just like that. Alright, so now at this point, we're going to go ahead and take our striker, install that, push it as far as it'll go, and notice it won't go all the way in yet. Alright, so now the back plate holds all of this stuff in there, and all of this stuff also holds on the back plate. So what I mean by that is, notice how the back of the, let me get a pointing tool here. The back of your striker has this C shape on it. Well, if you look at your back plate, it has a C shape on it as well. So it will actually lock into this back plate and hold it on. So what we actually need to do, we'll set our back plate on top, just like so. Then at this point, we will take a tool, any tool. I'm going to push in on the back of that striker, so that C part there. And that'll let my back plate go down a little further. Well, now this part's in the way, that spring and rod assembly. So I'm going to push down on that part and push that back plate down even further. And you'll hear it click into place once it's in place. just like so. All right, and it should look just like that. All right, so before I install my barrel and recoil spring or anything else really, I'm gonna go ahead and install my sights. You can use a sight pusher tool for this. There are different things to use on this stuff, but what I actually like to do, I'll do it the old-fashioned way in a vise. So I'll show you how to do it that way. All right, so what I'm gonna need right now is a tool to install the Glock front sight. Because the front sight isn't dovetailed in like the rear sight is, it uses a screw. So we'll need that with a little bit of Loctite. I'll place that right there. And let me grab my Glock sight tool. All right. So this is the Brownells Glock front sight tool. It's a driver specifically made for that front sight screw. And it'll work on pretty much any Glock front sight. All right, so I'm going to start by unscrewing this screw here. Take the post, position it in your slide, just like so. And we'll grab a little bit of Loctite, or just thread locker in general. It doesn't have to be Loctite brand, obviously. But I have plenty of the Brownells thread locker here. Alright, so we have the blue, which is the medium strength, and the red, which is high strength. For front sights, I like to use the red. And what I do, I'll give it a quick little shake, put just a dab on the table, scoop the screw into what's on the table here, and then just screw it into the slide. And just kind of check your front sight to make sure it is straight, because some of these have a little bit of play in them. So there's a little bit of left and right movement. And that looks pretty good. So just snug it up. Nice and snug here. Don't go crazy with it because it's not a very big screw, so it can't take a lot of torque. So I just snug it up and we're good. All right, let me get that Loctite off of there. Okay, now it's time for what some people consider the tricky part, and that is the rear sight. All right, so what we're actually going to do here is take the sight, and I'm going to do a fit check into this dovetail. So what I'm looking for when I do a fit check is I want to be able to push it in by hand at least a quarter, or well, almost right at a quarter of the way. This is going in a little bit under that, which means I'm probably going to have a pretty hard time hammering this thing in. So that also means it needs to be fitted. The good news is that's a very easy thing to do, because if you notice, this dovetail is a triangle. So in order to make it fit, all I have to do is remove some material for the bottom, because that also, as with a triangle, if you cut some off the bottom, that reduces the overall width. So that's all I need to do. So just take a stone and a little bit of oil. Let's see what kind of gun oil I want to use for this here. I like to use something a lot thinner for doing this kind of stuff. But I'll just put some oil on the stone and run the sight on the stone, keeping everything nice and flat. Alright, and then clean it, wipe off the sight here. And it doesn't matter which direction you go in, it's not directional. Just push it in It goes in a little bit further, but honestly that didn't do a whole lot. So just do that again. Just rinse and repeat. Don't remove anything from the slide. Don't try to file the actual angle on the sight itself. You don't need to do that. Alright. Let's see where we're at. Alright, that's a lot more like it. I can kind of feel it going in there now. Okay, so I'm going to take this in a vise. I'm going to lubricate the dovetail. Make sure the sight is facing the right direction. Like the back going in the back and the front going in the front. I'm going to use a hammer. I'm going to use something a little bit heavier than that brass one. And then now I'm going to need a punch. The punch I like to use for this, so I'll use a brass punch sometimes. And I have a brass dovetail punch as well. But if I can, a polymer punch is what I'll try to use the most, just because that's the easiest cleanup. And if you have an aluminum punch are great for this as well. But I'm just going to take my nylon tipped punch and drive this sight in. Yeah, that's going in straight. That's always a good sign. The slide itself is actually turning a little bit. And actually, I don't like using the rubber jaws for this for that reason, because it'll kind of absorb a lot of that impact. So I'm actually going to change out my vice jaws. The ones I really like to use for this are the micarta, because they won't damage or scratch anything, but they are solid. Anytime you have to hammer on something and you need the actual force to go into what you're hitting, these are great. The only thing that works better than this is aluminum, but the aluminum will come off on the slide and you'll have to have a little more cleanup. It's going in way easier. It's amazing how much of a difference just changing the vice jaws makes. I'm going to center it up to the best of my ability. That looks pretty dang centered. If you want to get crazy technical about it and be perfect, you can take some calipers or a micrometer and measure the depth on each side and get them even. But this looks pretty dang close. Chances are we would have to make some adjustment regardless of how centered we made it anyway if we were zeroing the iron sights. But we're using these as a backup, so I'm not going to worry about that right now at all. Now what I'll go ahead and do is take this Viridian sight here and just drop it right on this RMR cut slide. Alright, and this one is actually a pretty snug fit, so you just press it into place here, especially with the Cerakote on this thing here. And it is a very snug fit, but it's going right on there. Okay, so we take our screws, and to note, these screws come with the slide. Don't try to use the screws that came with the optic, use the ones that came with the slide. And there is a bit for this. And it's not that one. I think it's a T10 if I remember correctly. Yeah. And you can put a little bit of Loctite on these too. For these, I would not use red, I would use blue. But I'm just going to go ahead and install these. Nice and snug there. And if you want to throw a torque wrench on these, great. I highly recommend it. Just check with your optic manufacturer, and the torque settings will be in the instructions. So it'll vary from optic to optic, so I don't want to like lock you down to one specific torque range. So check your instructions. Okay. Now from here, I'm going to start the final assembly, and I'm going to be lubricating parts as I do that. I really like the Wilson Combat. Their universal lube. It's a thicker, not quite a grease, not quite an oil. I mean, technically it's both of those things. I don't know, whatever. It's a thicker gun oil. So what we'll do is we'll put some on the barrel. So where I like to put them is right here on this front locking shoulder here. We'll put some on the bottom. Put some in the where it engages the locking block, right up in there. And you can also put some a little bit around the hood here, because this is also a locking surface. And you can also take a little bit and put it around the front, because that's a contact area as well. Now we're going to take our barrel and drop it into our slide, just like that. And then if you slide it all the way back, it locks into place. The guide rod, you don't have to lubricate this. Just press it into place, just like so. And then to put it on the actual frame here, make sure your trigger is in the back position. What I mean by that is, if you notice, you can actually push your trigger forward like that. The slide's not, you're going to have a really hard time if you try and do it this way. So just make sure your trigger is pulled to the rear position. Now we're going to apply some lubricant to the rails where the slide runs on the frame. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now a little bit on that locking block area. And if you look at this piece of your trigger bar right here that's sticking up, this is what actually pushes that striker safety plunger we were messing with earlier. So I'm going to put some on the top of that. And then another area real quick here I'm going to do on the actual slide itself. Notice how this portion right here comes out and then back in, this raised area right here. This raised area is what runs against your connector right here. So I like to put a little stretch right on that part, because that is a high wear area also. Okay, now with these things like they are, all you need to do is start at the front and slide it onto the rails. Come all the way back. You may have to play with it a little bit, but come all the way back again, and then all the way back, and then just let it go. And everything is locked together. All right, so the only thing left to put on there is our light. So the X300U just uses a screw. And if you look at the bottom of these Grit Grip frames, I didn't talk about this, but they use pretty much the same exact cut that Glock uses. They don't use like a full 1913 rail. So pretty much anything that'll fit a Glock will fit right on this thing, which is awesome. I'm glad they did that. All right, so we will just set this on in position here. Tighten the screw. And it is locked on. All right, so now we just need to do a function check. All right, so I'm gonna actually have the magazine handy when I do that. I'll check the magazine here shortly. But to function check this, obviously we know it's unloaded because we just built it. No ammunition in the workspace whatsoever. All right, so I'm going to pull the trigger, hold the trigger back. I'm going to pull my slide back, and I'm going to bring it forward, making sure it goes into battery easily. Going into battery just means it's going all the way forward and locking up. Now I'm going to let off the trigger. All right, I heard it and felt it reset, and pull the trigger again. Another check I like to do with these is after I pull the trigger, take my finger completely off the trigger, and just make sure it actually worked there. Okay, great. And we can also notice how there's this little trigger safety on the trigger itself. We can make sure that that trigger safety is working by simply just grabbing the trigger by the sides here without touching that trigger safety in the front. Grab it by the side and try to pull it back. You shouldn't be able to pull it back. That means the safety is working correctly. So, yeah, that's pretty much all of it. Let's go ahead and check this magazine. So insert the magazine. Magazine should lock into place. Give it a pull. It shouldn't fall out. Push the magazine release, and the magazine should fall freely. It'll fall freely if you actually hold the button down and don't like tap the button and release it. All right, so that's good. That's perfect. Of course, if you hold it vertical, it works a lot better as well. Okay. Now let's check the magazine, or the slide catch. So we'll check that by inserting a magazine. Obviously, we have an unloaded magazine. And we're going to pull the slide back, and it should lock back. It locked back by itself. That's great. Drop the magazine, hit the slide catch. Yes, it's okay to let your gun slam forward. I don't hear any like cats screaming or meowing or anything like that. That's perfectly fine. It's okay to do that. And yeah, that all works just fine. So that's good. And we can obviously check to make sure it locks back manually. Now, what you should not see with this slide catch is it should want to stay down. With the magazine out, no magazine in, it should want to stay in the downward position. If yours wants to spring up, that means your spring on your slide catch is on the wrong side of this pin. So take it out and just start over at the installing the pin part, and then install the magazine and install the slide catch, and that'll solve that issue. Just hit the rewind button, go back and watch that part, because you did something wrong if you're having issues there. But that's it. That's all there is to it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, man, hold on. I was doing the outro, but we need to talk about something first. We need to talk about the actual texture on this grip, okay? The reason I like Grit Grips so dang much is because it looks like someone took a factory Glock slide and gave it the full custom, like, high-end stipple treatment, is exactly what the Grit Grip looks like. Whereas, like, a lot of aftermarket Glock slides, a lot of aftermarket Glock build frames, they tend to kind of look like their own thing. They look different than the Glock. A lot of the times, I don't think they necessarily look better. I think I don't know. Point I'm trying to make is these look super clean. They look fresh, all right? And that's what I really like about them. Not only that, but they feel really good in the hand, okay? There's a bit of a palm swell to them. It's very subtle, but you can feel it. Versus like the standard Glock one obviously doesn't have that. I think the Gen 6s have one. So it's almost more like a Gen 6 Glock frame, texture and feel wise. But not only do you have that swell right there, you also have a little bit more aggressive palm area in the back, which actually, for me anyway, it forces my hand higher, the web of my hand higher, which obviously shooting a semi-auto handgun is a good thing. For those of you who actually shoot, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Forcing your hand to get up there higher, and you have just better recoil management so that you can get those follow-up shots in so much faster and get back on target a lot easier. Man, this thing is... Alright, yeah, this thing's awesome. Not only that, but you got the textured gas pedal up here, and there's an actual ledge right there for you to rest your thumb on. So your thumb also just locks right into this thing. All right, we need to get to the range and shoot this thing, is what I'm saying. With that being said, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, experience with the product, I know some of y'all do because y'all are the ones that turned me on to this thing. Let me know in the comments down below. As always, if you need help with anything for any reason ever, feel free to give us a call on the tech line. We'll be happy to help you out. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.